I should have known the weekend was doomed the moment I stepped out of my car and smelled that sharp mix of lake water and old cedar, the scent of memories that were never as warm as the family pretended they were. My sister's husband, Mason, was standing on the porch like a guard dog who owned the place. He raised his glass at me and said, "Hope you brought more than excuses this time." His grin stayed frozen on his face for a beat too long, as if daring me to react. I didn't. I was too tired after a week of running my shop, juggling invoices, and telling myself this trip would be the reset we all needed. My name is Clara, and for most of my life I believed that family, even the dysfunctional kind, ran on loyalty. But the older I got, the more I realized loyalty meant nothing when it wasn't mutual. Growing up, things were simple: small house, hardworking parents, a family-owned repair shop with the aroma of engine oil and fresh bread drifting in from the bakery next door. My younger sister, Brooke, was the unpredictable spark in the household. While I memorized supplier codes and learned how to replace brake pads, she chased adrenaline, relationships, and trouble. When our parents died in a freak accident, a collapsed overpass during a storm, everything shifted. The estate wasn't large, but it was enough to give each of us a start. I invested mine into my dream workshop boutique, handmade leather goods, restored vintage pieces, unique finds. Brooke? She invested hers into Mason, who appeared in her life with the kind of charm that feels cheap once it wears off. Within a year, they married. Within 2, she was quieter, thinner, more cautious in ways I couldn't fully name. When our uncle suggested a family reconnect weekend at the lakehouse, stupidly, I let myself hope. I brought snacks, board games, even a new throw blanket for the guest room. I wanted peace, even if it felt forced. The first red flag was small. When I dropped my bag in the guest room, my tablet was exactly where I left it, but the stylus had been moved. Slightly. Intentionally. The tablet was warm, even though I hadn't touched it since the night before. Then came the second red flag, the kind you cannot explain away. A payment from my business account bounced. Then another. I shrugged it off as banking delays. But by morning, the truth slapped me awake. Every cent I had saved over 6 years had vanished. Not missing. Not pending. Gone. And when I looked across the breakfast table, only one person wasn't shocked. Mason. He smiled like someone watching their trap spring shut, but I hadn't realized he'd made one fatal mistake, and I was about to use it to turn the entire weekend upside down. I didn't want to believe the number on my screen. I refreshed it 3 times, hoping the app would correct itself, maybe display something other than that hollow zero staring back at me like an insult. But the truth didn't budge. My entire savings, 6 years of grinding, scraping, saving gone. I walked into the kitchen, every sound too sharp to ignore. Forks clinking, the coffee machine sputtering, voices dipping into awkward silence as I entered. Brooke looked up first. Her eyes darted away the second she saw my face. Mason just leaned back, arms draped over the chair like he was lounging through someone else's disaster. "My business account was drained last night," I said. My voice didn't wobble. Shock has a way of freezing everything into one clean line. The room went still. Uncle Ben set down his mug, brows knitted. Drained? How does that even happen? I placed my phone on the table. Every transfer was authorized. According to the bank, someone used my security details from a known device. I didn't say the word out loud, tablet, but Mason's eye twitched. Just slightly. Just enough. "Maybe you messed up somewhere," he said, waving his hand like he was shooing away a fly. "People accidentally delete things all the time. It happens." Delete? My money wasn't a file you hit backspace on. He knew that. That slip alone told me everything. Brooke's hands trembled as she lifted her cup. She didn't drink. She didn't even breathe. She just sat there like someone bracing for impact. "Mason," I said, "you're the only one who was upstairs last night." His laugh was so forced I almost smiled. "Are you serious? You think I'd waste my time going through your stuff? Please." I walked closer, slow enough for everyone to watch. "You were in the hallway. You told Brooke you were checking the fuse box." I tilted my head. The fuse box is in the basement. A few people exchanged looks. Mason's jaw ticked. Brooke finally spoke, voice barely a whisper. Clara, don't. No, Mason slammed his hand on the table. I'm not doing this. You lose money, and suddenly I'm the villain? The velocity with which he turned the blame was almost impressive. Almost. Until you've seen it enough times to know it for exactly what it is. Deflection, panic, guilt wrapped in arrogance. You'll get your money back, Mason said, shrugging. Call the bank. Cry to them. But don't drag us into your mess. Us. The word hit me harder than anything else. He didn't see Brooke as someone separate. She was just an extension of him, someone who flinched every time his tone sharpened. That's when the crack in the weekend widened into something unmistakable. Because Brooke didn't defend him. She didn't say a word. She just kept staring at the table like she was afraid of what would come out if she looked at me. And that silence said more than anything she could have spoken. I didn't know it yet, but Brooke's silence was the first confession, and Mason had no idea the evidence was already stacked against him. By midday, the atmosphere in the lakehouse felt like a pressure cooker. Everyone tried to pretend breakfast hadn't imploded, but the tension seeped into every corner. Cards were shuffled silently. Conversations died halfway through. Even the lake outside looked stiller than usual, as if holding its breath. I went to my room to clear my head, but the moment I pushed open the door, something snapped inside me. My tablet's lock screen was glowing. I never left it on. The battery icon was lower than it had been that morning. Someone had touched it again. This time, I didn't second-guess myself. I picked it up and went straight into the system log, something most people forget exists. A set of entries stared back at me. Failed login attempts, screen activity, password trial, file access. The timestamps lined up almost perfectly with when Mason had gone to check the fuse box. That was enough for me. I walked downstairs and stopped at the bottom step. Everyone in the living room now. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the space like a blade. They gathered slowly, Uncle Ben wiping paint off his hands, Aunt Lila glancing nervously between us, Brooke looking like she wanted to disappear. Mason sauntered in last, smirk glued to his face as usual. What now? He asked. I held the tablet up. You went through my device twice, last night and again this morning. He scoffed. You don't know what you're talking about. No. I turned the screen toward him. The system log disagrees. His smug expression cracked for half a second before he recovered. Anyone could have done that. No, I said calmly. Because the log includes a Bluetooth proximity ping from a paired device. A device that belongs to you. Brooke inhaled sharply. He froze. For the first time since I would arrived, Mason didn't have a rebuttal ready. Why were you in her room, Mason? Uncle Ben asked, voice low and colder than I'd expected. Mason shrugged, but the bravado was wearing thin. Maybe I knocked something over. Maybe I bumped it. Mistakes happen. Mistakes don't drain accounts, I snapped. Brooke stepped toward him, her voice trembling. Did you take her money? He didn't answer her. That silence spoke louder than guilt ever could. Then he exhaled hard, shoulders rising and falling. The kind of breath people take when they're about to switch tactics. His face smoothed over with that familiar charm he weaponized so well. You're all being dramatic, he said. Clara's paranoid. Brooke knows how she gets. Brooke flinched. He shouldn't have said that. Because dismissing me was one thing, but speaking for her over her, like she wasn't standing right there? That was the crack he didn't realize he'd just driven a wedge into. Brooke lifted her chin. Stop talking for me, Mason. That stunned him. The entire room felt it. The shift, the tiny rebellion he didn't see coming. And honestly, that was the moment I knew we weren't dealing with a money problem. We were dealing with a man who had finally lost control. And when a man like Mason senses he's losing control, he makes desperate moves, the kind that expose everything he worked so hard to hide. Mason didn't like losing the room. It was obvious in the way his jaw stiffened, the way his fingers tapped against his thigh like he was running out of patience or excuses. His mask had slipped, and he knew it. But instead of backing down, he doubled down. He always doubled down. Brooke, he said slowly, like he was explaining something to a child, you're letting her spin you into another one of her theories. You know how she gets when she's stressed. There it was again. Talking about her, not to her. Controlling the narrative like he owned everyone in the room. But this time, Brooke didn't shrink back. She didn't clasp her hands or lower her gaze. She stayed perfectly still. Mason, she said, voice quiet but surprisingly steady. Just answer the question. He turned toward her with a flash of irritation, so sharp I saw it slice across his expression before he could hide it. This is ridiculous. I'm not playing along with her hysteria. I didn't react. I didn't need to. Brooke did. Hysteria, she repeated. You drained her savings and you're calling her hysterical? That hit him like a slap.
For a second, his entire posture changed.
His shoulders tensed, his brows pulled tight, and his eyes hardened into something I'd only ever glimpsed in passing. Something that wasn't charm or arrogance. Something darker. Mistake, he muttered under his breath, but he wasn't talking about the money. He was talking about her speaking up. Uncle Ben stepped between them instinctively. She asked you a question. Answer it. Mason's voice sharpened. This is none of your business. It became our business when you stole from family under this roof. I shot back. His eyes snapped to me. You think you're clever? You think you're going to twist this on me? You can't prove anything. He was wrong and he didn't know how wrong. I walked to my bag and pulled out a slim black device. A backup drive. Not from my tablet, from the discreet security tool I had installed months earlier after a break-in attempt at my shop. A tool that mirrored activity logs, flagged unusual access attempts, and synced to my phone automatically. I held it up, casually. I don't need to prove anything, I said. This already did. His face drained of color. Not confusion. Recognition. Brooke looked at him like she was seeing him clearly for the first time in years. Mason, she whispered. What did you do? He didn't answer.
He didn't deny it.
Instead, he lunged for my bag. The room erupted, chairs scraping, shouts echoing. Uncle Ben grabbing his arm before he could reach me. Mason thrashed like a man who knew the walls around him were closing in fast. Let go, he barked. You don't understand. But he was wrong again. For the first time, everyone understood. And just when Mason thought he could claw his way out, the one person he expected to protect him delivered the blow that sealed his fate. Everyone froze except Mason. He went still for a different reason, recognition. His eyes widened a fraction, and his voice dropped into a frantic whisper.
No.
No, you didn't. I didn't answer him. Uncle Ben dragged him back as I moved toward the door and pulled it open. Cold air swept in, carrying the voices of two uniformed officers and a woman in a gray coat with a badge clipped to her pocket. Clara Turner? The woman asked. That's me.
I'm Detective Rowan.
We received an alert from your bank's cyber division about fraudulent transfers linked to your account. They traced multiple access attempts to this address early this morning. I stepped aside to let them in. Mason tried to straighten himself, tried to pull that effortless confidence back onto his face, but it wouldn't come. His voice cracked when he spoke. This is insane. I didn't steal anything. Someone hacked us. Detective Rowan cut him off calmly. Your phone was flagged as a paired device during the unauthorized access. Additionally, the bank forwarded a mirrored log from the victim's security backup that captured keystrokes and screen activity. Her gaze locked on him. And your face. Brooke's gasp broke something in the room. I handed the detective the small backup drive. She plugged it into a portable reader, scrolled once, and nodded. That's enough. Two officers stepped forward. Mason Reed, you are under arrest for financial theft, unauthorized digital access, and identity fraud. He lost whatever fight he had left. His shoulders slumped, not in regret, in realization. The kind of realization that arrives only when someone sees a door slam shut with no other exit behind it. Brooke, he said, reaching out as the officers cuffed him. Tell them I didn't. She stepped back. For once, she didn't tremble. She didn't avoid his eyes. She didn't shrink. You did, she whispered. That was the last thing he heard before the officers walked him out the door and down the gravel path. The lake house fell silent after they left, a different silence than before. Not fearful, not tense, just still.
Clean.
Like someone had finally exhaled after holding their breath for years. Brooke collapsed into a chair, burying her face in her hands. I sat beside her, not touching, just present. She needed space to unravel, to breathe, to rebuild. "It's over," I told her quietly. "You're free." Her voice came out cracked but certain. "I don't know what happens next." I nodded.
Good.
Because that means it's something new, something not controlled by him. For the first time in years, she let herself believe it. And later that evening, when I stood outside on the porch watching the lake ripple under the wind, I realized something simple and sharp. Sometimes justice isn't loud. Sometimes justice is just the truth finally walking through the door. And I had no idea that catching Mason was only the first storm, because what surfaced next at the lake house would make everything before it look small.